Welcome to this panel discussion where the four of us will try to find the meaning in this topic, Bitcoin versus normies in suits. I have to admit I made it up very quickly and I will be myself searching for the meaning. But first, we should probably introduce ourselves. I am Juraj Bednár. I am a co-founder of Paralelná Polis, and I do many interesting cypherpunk things. And now here I launched my new book about crypto. And I'm very curious about this new lunar punk vibe that is going on around, and I really like that we are looking back to the roots of all this cypherpunk crypto thing. So that's introduction about me and what I'm doing.
Hello, my name is Obi Nwosu. I've been in the Bitcoin space for quite a long time now. I think it's about a decade, and I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Fedi, which is a company that is being set up to help ensure that FediMint, which is this incredible protocol for custody, is successful, but moreover ensure that as we succeed, we get the best of the Bitcoin ecosystem and make sure that succeeds, starting with a focus on the global south and post-Soviet regions, but it's a product for the world. Other than that, I'm a board member for B-Trust, which was a not-for-profit originally set up and funded by Jack Dorsey and Jay-Z to fund the open source Bitcoin ecosystem development with and getting engineers from the global south, Africa and Latin America and all over the global south. And very recently, not formally announced, but I'm a board member and investor in Gridless Compute, which is a Bitcoin mining company based in rural East Africa, which is accelerating the electrification of rural East Africa using Bitcoin mining as the engine to achieve that.
I'm exiledsurfer. I've also been in the space for more than a decade. I'm originally actually an artist and sort of got sucked into various projects and businesses that had a lot to do with normies in suits around Bitcoin. And most recently, I'm the co-founder of Paralelní Polis in Vienna, which will be opening up later this year. And so, long-term member of the community.
Thanks. Hey folks, I'm Mário, and you might know me from various communities, from Bratislava, Paralelná Polis, here from Prague, Paralelní Polis, or Polis Paralelná in Barcelona, or various communities there. And I am myself a bit of a researcher. I do chaos engineering research, contribute to various open source projects, mostly on Bitcoin, Lightning, and Ethereum. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as you can see, this is hopefully going to be very interesting. I will start by maybe you guys remember maybe late 2017 when everyone was saying that the institutions will come and it will be completely different for Bitcoin because the institutions will bring institutional money and everyone will be rich. And it was interesting because after COVID, I realized that when I started to go around in communities and conferences, these people were gone. They were just not there. I was at Monerocon in Lisbon, and I felt like total back to the roots. Like one of the, like for example, Amir's London Bitcoin conference, where the energy was: we are coding, we are building things, we want that which is the source of the topic of our values. So in case of Monero, it's privacy. In case of Bitcoin, it is probably hard money, also maybe privacy, sovereignty, and so on. So, and I was also inspired by Bitcoin Pizza Day's talk, where he said that these kind of venture-funded startups that are not focused on creating, it's kind of a venture flipping thing, that they're kind of destroying the spirit, and that we have there is this feeling that we are going back to the roots of all this. We are creating projects that need to be created, and it's less about becoming rich fast, and it is more about creating these amazing projects like Fedimint and other things. So I'm not saying anything bad about the startups. We need them. They built what we are all using. So my first question regarding this is, so where are the normies in suits? What happened to them? Do we miss them? Do we need them? Maybe I don't know. If you haven't noticed this, then maybe.
So I think that all the normies in suits are, you know, at Avalanche and Solana and Near and all of these other new chains. But I disagree that the normies in suits aren't in Bitcoin. Yeah, I think that that there's, I mean, we're in a bear market, but we're in a very, very solid hodl market and a lot of large holders. So I think that let me go backwards. So either Bitcoin is for everybody or it's not for everybody. And at Bitcoin Pizza Day, Amir was standing here and raging about Bill Clinton and Tony Blair being down in Bermuda at a Bitcoin conference. And I was sitting here and I was thinking, yeah, but I mean, either they can use it too or they can't. So I think we have to be careful about saying, you know, who Bitcoin is for, right? It's, you know, that's like Bitcoin doesn't care, has to remain a central value. Yeah. That being said, I think that that the institutional money did come in, and the fact that the institutional money came in was not relevant because it increased the price of Bitcoin, but because it established you know, Bitcoin as an asset class. So that's what's happened. And people complain about correlation in the market, right? And I think that that's a period that we're going through right now, that we're seeing, you know, Bitcoin as a correlated asset. And when people talk about, you know, when's it going to decouple, you know, they're looking for the decoupling as a matter of greed, right? And so, if we really want Bitcoin to be something that is used by a large segment of the population and various stakeholders, then we need to remember that there's a place for normies in suits as well as for hackers and baklavas. Yeah, is kind of how it is that I look at it. Yeah.
I would add one thing. I think there are more normies in suits, both in Bitcoin and in other crypto projects than before. And there are more Bitcoiners. So both groups grew. But I think what happened is that they separated, that institutional people are doing their thing over there. There is not many normies in suits at the Hackers Congress.
Well, maybe they're not wearing them, you know.
So, and just as a background, before what I was doing now, I ran a Bitcoin exchange in the UK, in the city of London, for 8 years, and it's initially focused on institutional and high net worth individuals in Europe, mainly. There were a lot of internal debates as an organization between myself and our investors, who are generally traditional finance, normies in suits, as you would call it. I increasingly wanted to go along a Bitcoin route and offer it to the people, i.e. consumer, but there was a parallel drive to go towards derivatives and complex products. We created the world's first physically delivered Bitcoin futures, which got sold off and ended up being converted into this Bitcoin Cash thing, which became CoinFlex, which you may or may not know about in recent news. But so I have a lot of experience of normies in suits and so on. First of all, the current situation, I do think, one, there are still a lot of normies in suits plowing a lot of money into the space, but it tends to be going to the places where they have the most ability to get a return, and those generally are the places where they have the most ability to generate money from people who don't understand what they're doing and don't understand the long-term negative impact to their finances. That's my view, and that equals altcoins, basically. So, and altcoin financing, token distributions, and so on. These are mechanisms to be paid up front for something without having yet done the work for that thing. So, and you said you're being paid for the dream of the thing.
Yeah, so fee first in the old
Yeah, so
world.
you therefore can build an expertise around selling the dream for the thing and being paid for that dream, and then maybe delivering the thing. But the problem with that is, you can imagine, if you do not deliver the thing, it doesn't matter for you because you've already been paid for the thing. And what causes you to deliver the thing is hopefully you have integrity and you keep trying to do it. So that's where a lot of funding's going, because if you think of the mindset of institutional investors, normies in suits, they want the lowest risk on return. So that's where the lowest risk on return is for them, not for the end user, but for the investor. So that's where the money's going. And sometimes the founders who work with them get a little bit of the money that they get as well. So if you morally fluid, you may be comfortable with that as well. So, and then you have but what's really interesting is, and then you have a different type of normie in suits who's basically a trader, and they've come from institutional trading, and they'll just trade any assets, and they don't really mind, and they would trade between others, and they do like some of the aspects of cryptocurrency, but they are normally in a suit, but they're trading everything, including Bitcoin. But there's a third type of normie in suit, which is interesting, and I've noticed them become more and more vocal over the last year or so. And if it wasn't for them, Fedi wouldn't have existed. And this is someone who has a lot of financial capital, but they actually prioritize social capital above financial capital. They tend to be quieter than the others. They're still pretty well capitalized, and they're much more philosophically driven. And they do exist. They have generated a lot of wealth, but they still have strong, high levels of integrity. And they tend to be much more likely only invested in Bitcoin. So you're starting to see a reasonable ecosystem of Bitcoin-only VCs who could make 10 to 100x more from investing in every cryptocurrency. But because of their philosophical bent, they have chosen to only invest in Bitcoin. And some of them are very, very large organizations, but just very quiet, because again, that goes with being that sort of person. So for example, you can find out some of these just by looking at the list of people who invested in Fedi, because we only took money from people who indexed high on integrity, desire to help community, and passion, and as the people we took investment from. And obviously all of them had to be absolutely 100% Bitcoin only, because it's sort of a mechanism for filtering. It's a really powerful filter for the type of normie and suit that we want. And that third type is growing and growing and growing. So I'm excited about that type.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that that group is growing? Is it because of, you know, what we've seen play out in the altcoin scene, or I mean?
Yeah. So in 2020, I wrote a tweet. It's still my pinned tweet, and I plan to revisit it in somewhere between 2 weeks to 2 months, time before the end of the year, which was where I predicted that Bitcoin will win in 2023. But this was in 2020. I wrote this. And I'm now more convinced than ever that it will become blindingly obvious by the end of 2023 that there's no point in developing, there's no positive point of developing on any other platform other than Bitcoin. And I think these people with high conviction have made that realization as well. If you want to build what you call smart contracts, decentralized apps, and so on, it will be very clear that the best way to do that will be on Bitcoin. So if you're worried about the environment, it will be clear that the best way to deal with that will be with Bitcoin, not with proof of stake. It's going to become very, very, very clear. And that wasn't clear before.
The thing is that there's been huge friction about people developing on top of Bitcoin, and we have people like Eric Wall and Udi Wertheimer who very amusingly go through this and point things out, and like there's a lot of friction about inside of the Bitcoin community about developing on top of Bitcoin, or at least a lot of vocal people about that. No. Yeah, and so the thing is that Bitcoin hasn't really actually succeeded in attracting developers.
I don't agree with that logical conclusion from the previous statement. There are some incredible engineers in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and so it has succeeded, but you'll tend to find, just like the normies and suits who invest, the engineers also just get down and build, and they don't engage in that conversation. And their response is, you state there's an issue, we will build the proof that you're wrong, and then the output will demonstrate by action that you're wrong. So in the case, for example, of functionality, it also is a time preference. What people say is, well, today Bitcoin is not able to do things that I want to do, therefore it's failed. And they're not able to understand that these are not fundamental limitations of Bitcoin. With 6 months to 12 months worth of engineering, we can engineer a solution that not only does what you want it to do, but it can do 10 to 100x more.
Well, so I'll use my favorite example. So I spent a bit of time working in the RSK community. And so RSK, or Rootstock, for those of you who don't know what that is a side chain that's merge mined with Bitcoin, that has an EVM on top of it, which allows for composability for products like the project that I worked with and that was a sponsor of HCPP, Sovereign DeFi platform. And there's a huge developer community in South America around RSK. It does do composability, what Ethereum is. And there's just like nobody that's from North America who's interested in RSK, and yet we have that sidechain. We have Liquid, right? We do have composability and ways to do things on top of Bitcoin. And Bitcoiners are just like, it ain't Bitcoin. No, we don't want it. Yeah. So, I mean, how are we going to move forward? I mean, when that's the reason, sentiment.
Yeah. So, because we there's an MVP for Bitcoiners, which if you do not meet, then it's not good enough. And we have to try harder. We don't accept mediocrity. Because we're building a currency, we're building a money which is supposed to support 8 billion people and counting. And it's not just for the wealthy West. It's not just for.
So I'm going to be very, very contrarian here.
But just to respond. So we have a weight of responsibility to build a system that's going to scale and support and protect privacy and so on. So our MVP is perfection. We know that's not achievable. We are pragmatic as well, but that's our North Star. So with that in mind, one of the fundamental problems with RSK is it uses an EVM. That's a non-starter right at the beginning. So that's why that was excluded. I know this, Eden Diego from Sovereign. I really respect what he's trying to do, but it's built on top of RSK, so that's why that's a failure as well. Now, there are systems that are coming out now which have, there's a sense that they've been architected in ways which are in keeping with the philosophy of Bitcoin. And so you're seeing they're gaining more traction. I don't really want to push the products that I work on, but you can notice that Fedimint, for example, which, by the way, requires a level of trust, but still, it's very transparent about the level of trust it requires, as opposed to, because all consensus systems require proof of authority. It's what is the authority that you're requiring. With proof of work, it's the authority is whoever is the hardest working, best user of energy in the most efficient manner is the person who's able to decide on what's the next block, i.e. it's a proof of merit. It's a meritocratic system. It's a proof of being the best. So it's actually a programmatic meritocracy. And that's effectively what you get with Bitcoin. With proof of stake, it's whoever has the most money is the one who decides the next block. So effectively, yeah, no, I know RSK is proof of work, but so that's the blockchain event. And then in the case of Fedimint, it's whoever you know within your community who's had the longest track record of acting in the community interest and with integrity. So effectively, it's proof. It's integrity is the determining factor on that. With an EVM based blockchain, the fundamental challenge is that you can do much better. You do not need a blockchain to perform most things that you want to do with these platforms. A blockchain is something that, as usage increases, it gets slower. It doesn't scale. It's by design. So do you want those properties for the system that you're building decentralized apps on? Probably not. If you look at the Lightning Network, on the other hand, the more it's used, the more people who create Lightning nodes and the more they're strongly connected with each other, the higher the capacity goes. If you look at BitTorrent as a protocol, the more it's used, the faster it gets. So for example, there's another protocol that's starting to appear called Hole Punch, a very simple and powerful video conferencing app called Keat was built on top of that. It's designed to work with Bitcoin and Lightning. But the more users who use it, the faster it gets. It's not a blockchain.
Like IPFS.
IPFS is another one. But so these systems, there is interest in the Bitcoin community for them because they're architected for the problem that they're designed to solve. They're not just saying, well, let's just use a blockchain, even though it's not the right solution for that.
So I would disagree. I love your points totally. Few things is about the EVM chains there, because it comes, what you're presenting is that, well, there are some mediocre solutions right now, and we want to do the perfect one. And what I see in the Bitcoin community is that because of this narrative, or how conservative the community got, there is actually no innovation coming which is able to create a breakthrough. So the EVM is something which we had here for 7 years. There are billions of dollars and so much research and development coming into this world, and there is no technical, the Bitcoiners start from this point that it's somehow fundamentally broken, which I don't get. I mean, it's complex system, but it's sandwich complexity, which is a maybe different vision than what Bitcoin wants, but it's not fundamentally wrong. It works. We see it work. We see it work for distributed applications for many, many years, and millions of users and billions of dollars going through it. And currently it's holding more money than the Bitcoin is. And considering Ethereum, which has, and other chains which hold not just their native token like Ether, plus all the stable coins are held on these chains, on the EVM chains. Like, so if there is some fundamental security or whatever issue in the EVM chains, we would see a problem across, well, bigger market cap or more applications than Bitcoin, but I had other point and I lost it. Sorry.
No, I mean, if there was a problem with it, you're right. If there was a problem with it, you would see things like new projects appearing which lose their users billions of dollars. If there was a problem with it, you would see founders of projects having Interpol red notices put against them for
me, that's
causing.
Success. If Interpol knocks on my door, I'm doing something well.
When it causes people to commit suicide or burn themselves alive because of the flaws in the system, you see that's a sign of success.
I have two things that I'd like to throw into the discussion. One is, should Bitcoin scale, actually? Yeah, or should it remain an alternative for those that understand it? Yeah, because it requires a high level of commitment and intelligence and self-responsibility. And scaling solutions are always about removing that complexity and that responsibility, right? So there's a certain commitment that you have to make in using Bitcoin that is abstracted away by other solutions, I think. That's the first point that I'd like to raise. And the second point is, I do not like being coerced to use the dollar, and I sure as fuck do not want to be coerced to be using Bitcoin. And I have this sense. So what annoys me about Bitcoin maximalism, and I'm long-term Bitcoiner, what annoys me about that perspective is this like demand of Bitcoin being the one and only thing. And I'm sorry, but we live on a planet with 160 nations. We live on a planet with 121 national currencies, commodities, and the zero-sum end game of Bitcoin maximalism just gets in my throat as an anarchist.
I think I no longer get upset by being called a Bitcoin maximalist, but I think that's actually a form of passive aggression, because I've not suggested that anyone do anything that they shouldn't.
Oh, I wasn't talking about you. This is just a general comment.
But why did you bring it up?
Well, I don't see this.
So then I apologize.
I don't see this being exiledsurfer versus Obi. I see it as Bitcoin versus Normies.
I apologize. It seemed to suggest that there was a causal relationship. So
no.
So I'll take the general question then. Yeah. So I think many
questions.
So many people talk about these Bitcoin maximalist boogie monsters, and I think you'll find that there are people who are just, they believe in Bitcoin no matter what, and there's no necessarily logic behind it. It's just an emotional thing. But I think you'll find that a lot of people who are categorized as Bitcoin maximalists are actually what I like to call Bitcoin rationalists. So it's not a matter of Bitcoin or nothing else. It's more that logically we will end up at a place where you will end up with Bitcoin, whether you like it or not. And it's not because you're being forced to, it's because all the others will it'll become clearer and clearer that the things you want to do on those other platforms can be done better with other solutions.
Sorry, I just don't accept that because what is it I see happening right now?
You made 2 points, so
right, yeah.
but that's the first. So that was one about Bitcoin maximism. Just from but people can do whatever they want. But the second thing is there is a need for other types of assets. Most Bitcoin maximalists don't have a problem with the idea of stocks, for example, or owning property if you want to. But that's a different type of asset, so it's a different form of currency. So unless if you believe that they have no desire to own any other asset, then you're believing that they don't believe that property should exist. They don't believe that stocks and shares should exist, which they do. Now, just to put these in material terms. In the next, they're already all out right now, all working on mainnet and developable. But in the next 6 months, they're all going to be released fully. You have, and I mentioned a few of them. We have Bitcoin at the base layer, and now, for example, one of the inevitable things was that we will have to always build in layers. Every major technology has been built in layers. The internet was built in layers. A house is built in layers. And it's the same for a new financial paradigm. It'll be built in layers. Bitcoin has said, logically, Bitcoin rationally is that it's likely that cryptocurrencies will also be built in layers. This was something that others said, well, you're just wanting everybody to, and you're trying to force me to use Bitcoin, and you want layers on Bitcoin as opposed to me to experiment. And the point was, very rationally, that you can go off and do what you want, but you're going to end up going back to layers. And most people say, no, we'll be able to do it all on the base layer. Now, the received wisdom is that the only way to scale is on layers. So there's been no U-turn on that. We knew that was going to be the case, not because we're saying the layers could be built on a different platform, but it would need to be on layers to scale indefinitely. So the question then is, if you are building on layers for scaling, the next thing is, okay, how limited are you if you build on layers? Unlimited. Okay, then how many different platforms do you need that have an unlimited capacity to grow? Only one. So it should just be logical deduction at that point. If you look at every other platform, the internet and so on, the internet protocol stack is not necessarily the most efficient, conceivable way we could architect it. But there is only one because there's this massive network effect to being on one platform. So this is where we believe this is just a series of logical conclusions that will mean that you will end up with one platform. It may not be Bitcoin, but given that the base layer should be the thing that's the strongest, most stable, most proven store of value in a financial-based infrastructure. And you do not have to have the functionality at the base layer. Just like when you're building a house, the foundations of the house don't have to have the ability to regulate temperature or have pretty colors and so on. That can be handled at a higher layer in paint or with windows or so on. The base layer just needs to be strong at holding up the house. It's the same for a layered approach to finance. The base layer should be your fundamental money, your store of value. On top of that, you build higher layers. One layer can be your payment mechanism. We have that with Lightning. Another layer can be your custody and privacy solution. That's what we all have with Fedimint and Xiaomi and eCash. Another layer can be your mechanism for handling tokens, i.e. stable coins, NFTs, and so on. And that layer, for example, one proposal is a system called Taro. Another one was RGB. So, and Taro is just announced only a few days ago.
Yeah, the same day as you did a transaction of Fedimint here, right? Yeah. This is
very nice. I would like to maybe just say one thing and then zoom out a little bit. I like what you both said, actually. Both had a piece of truth. I think the main problem with the thinking of Bitcoin, not thinking, with what you're actually comparing is, I will give an example. Here in Parallele Polis, we have experienced payments, the problem with high fees on Bitcoin on chain. And the fee was around $40 at the time. And the problem was that that when people want to pay $2 for coffee, they cannot pay $40 for the fee. Of course, everyone here back then, I think, was Bitcoiner, including me, and mostly Bitcoin only. And because it's a Bitcoin coffee, you can only pay with Bitcoin. What do? The only thing that we could do back then was Litecoin, because there was no Lightning. And all the Bitcoiners said exactly what you said. Oh, there will be Lightning, you know, it will work this way. And I'm like, dude, tomorrow, first customer comes 9 a.m., they want an espresso, and they want to pay tomorrow. Yes. And there is no, so the problem... Exactly. So what I'm saying is that you are comparing Bitcoiner vision of future products into today's products that that people are actually using. And I like your vision. Other people have different visions, but you cannot compare a vision of future and compare it with real products today, because you don't have the vision implemented. So,
no, but let's remember how this started. The first statement was where we're going to end up in the future. And so in the future, I think that just logically you will inevitably, once we've implemented all these systems, which, by the way, is happening, this future now is no longer sometimes 6 years in the future. We're now talking 3 to 6 months in the future. You'll start seeing all these tools actually being workable and usable. So within 6 months of that, you're going to see this huge swathe of volume move over to Bitcoin. So it's no longer in the distant future. But in the interim, which is a separate point, that wasn't the original point, use what you need to use. I've never, and so, but the question was that it will inevitably move back to Bitcoin because these solutions have been being worked on for several years in many cases, and they are engineered from a clean room perspective to be the easiest to develop on, the fastest to develop on, the lowest cost way of developing on it. So even today, a few years ago, you couldn't use, it would have been very expensive. So then you were forced to use other systems. I'm not stating that. And it was valuable to have other options. But now, would you use Litecoin or would you use Lightning?
Now we use Lightning.
Yes, so you went back to Bitcoin, not because it's Bitcoin, it's just because logically it's cheaper and faster and better, because people saw the problem and they didn't rush to solve it. They said, okay, use whatever you need to use, and we will go away and then find a solution that has the potential to be 1,000 times better and 1,000 times faster. And that's been the same thing has happened for privacy. Chairman eCash is a 39-year-old protocol, which is considered one of the best protocols for privacy there is. We figured out a way of doing that within the Bitcoin ecosystem, and it provides cryptographically near-perfect privacy using incredibly mature cryptography. You can use something that's 10 years old, less tested, and if you want to, but why when you have this thing that was 39 years old, invented by David Chaum, which we know is provides cryptographically near-perfect privacy? You decide which one do you think people are going to choose.
If I can step in, just one point you had, and I totally see what happened there. So there was the Litecoin era in Paralelní Polis, and then in like 2019, I've been to the Bitcoin, to the Lightning Conf in Berlin. I got very inspired, and I was pushing Lightning here so fucking hard, and I wanted to get rid of the Litecoin, and it wasn't easy. Like everybody said half a year, and they were saying it for like 3 years. I believe now it's kind of happening since last year. We have finally the badges. We solved exactly like it's also about the user experience, that people are coming to the cafe and we will be able to always give them a card, just NFC or QR code, and they pay with that. It's on-chain private key, and that's ridiculous from security or privacy perspective. And now, but we cannot achieve this user level on Lightning. It took 2 years to get there. We have it now, but it's still a trade-off of custody because this is custodial, right? So now, to me, it's still not the ideal solution, and we are still figuring it out. And with these technologies, with Taro, I was following RGB for years now, and I'm very excited to see it. But still, now Taro or RGB going out in coming months, it will be there where, well, the Ethereum or the EVM was 6 years ago when it was coming out. And maybe there is, and when we're talking about user and developer experience, this is what has been improving in that ecosystem for years and years. There's been so much well, research and development done, but also the experience. For the security perspective that you mentioned many hacks, that's exactly the thing. Like how they imagine that it will be, how it will work, and the security practices we learned over those years are putting the technology so much. Like you mentioned, something is that it's not finished yet, but it's so much further in the line of adoption and the security-wise that I would be much more scared to use alpha of some technology. But we also talk about the tools. So from the cryptoanarchy perspective, I use it. I see it pragmatically. I want to use a tool. I want to do a private transaction. Okay, I can figure out 13 coin joins through Bitcoin and spend 5 hours on it, or just send a monero transaction. And now I need to take a loan. I don't want to use some BlockFi shit, which will take all my money and ask for KYC. And I would like to use something on Bitcoin, which is secure enough. I don't know. But, well, the most decentralized and secure protocol there is MakerDAO to do that. And it's not running on Bitcoin. And now, okay, there will be maybe some
future project or centralized project, or in 3 months maybe there will be something, but you can use this.
Yeah, but I mean, so it will be on third layer of Bitcoin, and okay, that's cool. Yeah. But now it's on still the purpose or modeled in some way that the developers intended. But I want to create whatever I like. So the beautiful thing, which is not for everyone, it's for people who like to play, but the EVM gives them the playground. Everything is open, everything works with everything, so we can just plug it in with your solution and create your alternative and build whatever you like. It's permissionless. So like this neutrality of the platform is something what I'm missing from the vision of being for everyone. While the EVM tries to scale it, there is big scaling. Like there is so much money. Talking about the VC before, there's so much money going.
Can I zoom out?
Yeah. Okay. Continue.
Okay, I wanted to zoom out a little bit because when I suggested Bitcoin Maxi versus non-Maxi panel, they said that it would be super boring. But it's not boring. Sorry, don't be insulted. I'm just saying that we should maybe talk about something else for a bit. We have a few more minutes, and I really like this narrative of LunarPunk that has been presented here, and there will be a panel about it. But I would like to relate it to the vision and to the normies in suits, and I have 2 questions. So first, when I was thinking if the opposite of LunarPunker is a normie in suit, I realized no, the SolarPunkers, they don't wear suits either. It's like people like Vitalik or the Ethereum people around here in Polis. And I think both SolarPunkers and LunarPunkers are punk. And the normies in suits are not opposite to LunarPunk, but to the punk itself. They're normies in suits, which is the opposite of punk. And so one question is, have you seen these basically financially motivated investors, normies in suits, versus the vision of what they're building, whether it's Solar or LunarPunk or Bitcoin or EVM or something else? So that's the first question. And second question is that the projects have to interact with them. Almost every project needs financing, so either you crowdsource or you take a financial investor. And with every interaction, both sides are changed. So my question is, can we take something from them learn something from them. They have a lot of experience in many other fields. So how to befriend and kind of grow out of the interaction. So these are...
Is it possible for the audience to describe what you mean by Lunarpunk and Solarpunk?
Oh, sure. Okay, so Solarpunk, Solarpunk is a vision of a transparent society powered by technologies. So usually solar panels, transparent financing like crowdfunding and so on. So the vision is we are doing something so great that everyone has to see that this will help society grow and it's good for everybody. And Lunarpunk, to say it quickly because it has been defined better, is a vision of multiple, let's say, projects and societies, and they're anti-fragile to any kind of attack from the state. So they do not accept the vision that everyone will have to like this beautiful future, but there will be some who oppose it. For example, politicians who think that they should supply this beautiful greatness. So it's more smaller decentralized projects that grow when the state attacks them. They're anti-fragile. And the whole ecosystem gets better because some projects die, they don't survive the attack, and they grow. And both of these philosophies are creating projects, and they have to be financed. Someone has to pay the programmers, pay the technologists, and so on. So both of these actually have a relationship with normies in suits. Maybe they're not normies. Maybe some of the normies don't wear suits. So stereotypes are not not very good in this case, but.
So here, I've always believed that Bitcoin can only be regulated at where it intersects with legacy systems, where it intersects with fiat, and that's what we've seen. And if we take, since 2017, we've had our own financing possibilities, by issuing promises on delivery of products. What we've seen is that everybody who's interacted with normies in suits has been polluted. I don't think it's possible to survive the financial incentives that come along with venture capital. I haven't seen it. And I have to admit that I myself also fell down that trap in being comfortable with the amount of money, what it is that I was making. And I've spoken with other people in the community that have also at a certain point said, well, goddamn, there's so much fucking money out there. Might as well take some of it. Some of you are sitting here in the audience and know what it is that I'm talking about. And so I'd like to come back to where the original statement was when I said, is Bitcoin the thing that should scale, or should Bitcoin remain the alternative to other things that scale? And I'm slowly coming to the belief that Bitcoin, if it's going to survive, is only going to survive if it's an alternative and not if it's the standard. And essentially the reason why it is that I like Bitcoin, the core thing that I like about it is the non-state money issue. And I don't want to see Bitcoin be the standard that governments are using. I don't want it to see it as the standard for finance, for derivatives, because every step down that path looks to me, with the experience of the last 12 years, ends up to compromise, co-option, and in the end, coercion, would be my answer. Yeah.
Do we have time?
We don't have time.
No time.
No time.
I actually like one sentence and...
That went really fast.
Sorry, that was because of my long intro. So thank you very much, Obi, exiledsurfer, Mário.